All right, ladies and gentlemen, I have great pleasure to presenting the keynote speaker for today, and I thought I'd give it to someone that we all know, and that's called Google. And especially this lady here, she has been, she's very, very busy, and she's been with Google now 10 years. Is that right, Michelle? So she's head of travel for Google, so a very important keynote session. And she's going to go through Think Like a Retailer, the changes to consumer behaviour that are here to stay. Please welcome on stage Michelle Allen, head of Google, head of travel, not head of Google. It's late in the afternoon. Please welcome Michelle. Thank you.
Bit disappointed that, do you use this one? Bit disappointed that my session doesn't include a drink. Thank you so much for having me. This is a bit of a milestone event for me. This is the first time I've been back on a conference stage for pretty much exactly 2 years. So I'm really excited to be here, and what a 2 years it has been for our industry, and I'm sure all of you here who work in accommodation or travel have faced a lot of challenges in the last 2 years. So I'm just going to have a look back over the last 2 years and especially how that has changed consumer behaviour, especially when it comes to interacting online. You'll know this very well, we've all lived it. But in February 2022, we were all out, we were about, we were socialising, and just 2 months later, in April 2020, we were in lockdown. We were at home, borders were closed, travel industry basically shut down. And so what happened during that time was quite interesting with consumers. When they were at home, they started shopping a lot more online. So the first part of this presentation I'm going to take you through is looking at what happened in the retail industry, because it's quite interesting to see how consumer behaviours changed when it came to retail during COVID. So when COVID hit and we were all locked down, we all started working from home, it was quite interesting to see that household internet usage increased by 150%. And that's when all of us started to really care about how fast our internet speed was. So we saw on Google a massive spike in searches around internet speed. Makes sense, right? All of a sudden we were trying to figure out how to work from home, or the video conferences, realizing that your patchy internet actually is not going to cut it if you're going to keep working from home. What we also saw was that, yes, internet usage spiked per household, but we were also spending a lot more time online during COVID. We spent more than 17% more time online. And what we wanted to understand is was this going to be a sustained behaviour, or was it just a blip during the start of COVID? What we saw is it did in fact create a sustained change in behaviour. During COVID, 82% of households were shopping online, and they were spending more online as well. Makes sense, right? We couldn't go to the shops, so we were shopping online. The next statistic I find really interesting, because we talk a lot about loyalty in the travel industry. Loyalty is very important to our industry. But during COVID, 39% of Aussies were willing to purchase from a brand that they have never purchased from before. Now, I don't have the answer to this, but I've got another stat coming up later which also supports this theory, or it's a question really: are consumers becoming less loyal? Has this increased online shopping, increased choice, comfort in researching, is that decreasing loyalty? And as travel sellers, that's definitely something that I would encourage you to think about, and look at your loyalty bases, look at repeat customers, and see if there are any trends there. That's definitely one that I'm going to be looking at. 1 in 2 Australians have also become more comfortable interacting with brands online. We had to interact with brands online because we couldn't go to physical stores, we couldn't go to physical places. So 50% of Australians have done more online, and they're more comfortable doing that online as well. So these new behaviours are creating new habits. 90%, these are still retail stats, 90% of Australians now expect retailers to sell their products online. Doesn't mean they're necessarily going to transact online, but they're expecting to find products online. And the second stat goes to that piece around loyalty. 1 in 3 consumers will choose their second choice brand over their first choice. Again, that's another indicator to me. We should be looking at loyalty, and we should see how this progresses, especially for the travel space, as people get back out and traveling again over the next 12 to 24 months. Consumers are becoming increasingly more complex in how they are doing their research and purchase journey. 91% of all consumers expect to be able to interact with brands and products via 2 or more channels. That could be, for example, your website, your app, could be a website on your desktop, mobile, could be social media, it could be in-store as well. But consumers are expecting to interact with brands in more than one place. So when you're thinking about your channel mix, your communications, my recommendation would be to start looking at that multi-channel mix, because consumers are expecting that now. And it wasn't just the shopping piece that we saw changes in consumer behaviour, that transacting piece. We actually saw some interesting trends when it comes to the research phase. We saw it across all demographics, but especially in the under 55 demographic. Consumers were coming to Google really in that research phase, and that was quite a substantial increase to what it was pre-COVID. So again, thinking about consumer purchase journeys, they're very complex now. You're looking at multiple channels. You're looking at different stages of researching and exploring. It's important that you are where your customers want you to be, and that is in more than one channel. And more than half of retail searches happen on Google outside office hours, so outside that 9 to 5 space. So that's where digital really starts to shine, is that you can have a 24-hour presence. So if you only have a physical location and you're selling through a physical location, now is the time to think your consumers are online, and most retail searches are happening outside those business hours. So what are the key takeaways? Number one, people are always shopping, and it's becoming increasingly more complex to be able to connect with your consumers, because the purchase journeys are complex. And why I use retail as an example, we see this over and over again, is that when there is one disruption in one particular industry, consumer expectations and behaviours change, and their expectations do not stay limited by that specific industry. So we've seen changes in retail, but now consumers are expecting the same experience across multiple industries, so it's not just limited to retail. Let's have a look at some travel stats, my favourite. These are probably not going to be a surprise to you. Nearly half of, over a third of Australians' travel plans were disrupted during COVID. I know that I had multiple cancelled and rebooked and recancelled trips. But the good news is that we're seeing really strong consumer intent come back. People want to travel. We're seeing that through our search data. And the phrase I love, it's not my phrase, I wish it was my phrase, but it's revenge travel. There is such a huge pent-up demand for people who want to travel. They're actually willing to spend more on their trips in 2022 than they did pre-COVID. People feel like they need a reward, and they're willing to pay more for it than they did before. Revenge travel, one of my favorite phases. And there is still uncertainty out in the industry. There are still, restrictions and health requirements. There is a lot of uncertainty, but we are continuing to see that travel intent grow, that desire to travel both domestically and internationally. So in these statistics, we're seeing that 11 million Australians are planning to travel domestically within the next 6 months, and 5 million internationally within the next 9 months, and you can see the growth figures there. I expect that this will continue over the next 12 months. I know that I'm so excited to travel. That's obviously my passion, but I think that especially as it becomes clearer and less complex, consumers and travellers will be booking more and more. So I have high hopes that 2022 and 2023 is going to be a fantastic year for the travel industry. Yay! This is also interesting. Historically, pre-COVID, seasonality in travel was relatively predictable depending on the time of the year. So if you're selling travel, if you're an online travel agent, you're selling hotels, you would generally know what your busy periods were and what your quieter periods were. This changed during COVID, obviously with lockdowns, so we're seeing much bigger variances in when demand is happening and when consumers are looking for travel. Why this is important is it becomes, as a travel seller, a lot harder to predict when your busy periods are going to be and when your quiet periods are going to be. So it's really important to keep your eye on consumer trends and demands so that you are able to flex your messaging that you've got out in market, also your pricing. The key here is that I think we're going to have to remain agile. Obviously, 2020 was 2019, 2020, 2021 were years that it was changing so fast and all the time. I think that will continue, and as travel sellers, you'll need to remain agile and flexible to really take advantage of those peaks in demand. Another phenomenon, and this one to me isn't so surprising, but with all of the uncertainty, people are leaving it later and later to book their travel. They don't want to take the risk of a new outbreak and a new lockdown. So they're leaving it more and more last minute to actually book their travel. Again, as travel sellers, this makes it really hard when you're trying to predict your capacity, work with your pricing, understand what your seasonality is going to be. But again, I think until consumers really start to feel confident that their plans aren't going to be disrupted, that this last minute booking trend will continue. I'm going to take you through briefly at the end of these slides some really great free tools that we have where you can start to understand, and they're really easy to use, where you can start to understand what is happening with consumer demand and consumer intent, where they want to go and from which destination they're from. So if you run a hotel chain with multiple properties, understanding what consumers are looking for will be key to understanding which hotel or destination you perhaps want to promote, or you want to talk about more, or you want to send information to your loyalty base about. But what we're looking at here is in the top row, it's people searching from Australia. In the bottom row is people searching from New Zealand. The first column on the left is what they're searching for domestically, and on the right, internationally. So what we're looking at here is, in Australia, the top 3 destinations that people are searching for in terms of volume are Sydney, Melbourne, and Brisbane. These are always the top 3 because they're the biggest cities. That's not really that surprising. In New Zealand, Kiwis are searching for Auckland, Wellington, and Queenstown. Internationally, Aussies are searching for Bali, London, and Singapore. And in New Zealand, the top international destinations are actually the same ones that the people in Australia are searching for as the biggest cities: Sydney, Melbourne, Brisbane. But these do change. So this is in terms of volume. Sydney, Melbourne, Brisbane are always right up there. But what it's also important to look at is growth, because we've seen some interesting destinations come up when it comes to growth. So I've just flicked the slide there, and you might have seen a couple of subtle changes. But what we're looking at here is, you see Alice Springs. Domestically in Australia, Alice Springs is one of the top rising destinations in terms of searching and consumer intent. In New Zealand, Kiwis searching domestically, Dunedin came into the list. So whereas before it was Auckland, Wellington, Queenstown, in terms of volume, in terms of growth, Dunedin makes it onto the list. International growth for Aussies, Bali stays on the list, but we've got Auckland and Manila. Obviously, Auckland New Zealand has very recently opened up. And so that's one of the biggest growth destinations. And for Kiwis coming here, it stays the same. It's the top international destinations are Sydney, Melbourne, Brisbane. Why is this important? Because this is changing all the time. And as I mentioned, if you do have multiple properties or multiple offerings, then you can look at, okay, how do you tailor your messaging to make sure that you're answering that consumer intent and consumer demand? We've spoken a little bit about last minute bookings and the changes in seasonality. There is still a lot of uncertainty around travel policies, health requirements, where you can travel, where you can't travel. So there is a lot of nervousness still out there from consumers. And we did one of our sentiment surveys, and flexible booking options came out top for driving consumer confidence into actually making a travel purchase. Again, really important when you think about your messaging to consumers is what do they care about? What is it actually that's going to make them make that booking? They want reassurance that they're going to have flexibility. The next four are all around, so I said the next four are a lot about COVID and understanding COVID cases and hygiene and vaccination rates. But it is important to know that knowing the bottom one there, people still want to know that they're getting a good deal. So despite all of this complexity and all of this nervousness, consumers are still looking for a good deal. They want to know that they want to get a good price. They're going to get a good price. A couple of years ago, we did a study with a team of behavioural scientists to try and unpick a little bit more the mindsets that, or the thought processes that take consumers from that research phase into actually purchasing. And with now more consumers online, they're expecting multiple touch points for you to talk to them on or for them to be able to interact with you. They're going through multiple exploration and then evaluation phases. So exploration is big thinking, it's about researching, what are my possibilities, and then evaluation is whether or not that stays on the shortlist or it's off. So as a travel seller, or actually any seller, a retail seller, it's really important to think about how can I move someone through that exploration into the evaluation and actually make them purchase. And remember, they're doing this across multiple channels. And there were 6 characteristics that were identified as really important in terms of helping consumers make that shift into purchase. And this is important for your messaging when you're talking to consumers, however you are communicating with them, whether it be digital, whether it be in store. These are the 6 characteristics that we identified as the top ones that move consumers into that purchase mindset. Number 1 is category heuristics. It sounds pretty complicated. What it essentially means is just simplifying your product and making it really clear what you're selling in a short amount of words. The power of now, this was probably more relevant to the retail industry. That's the longer a customer has to wait for their product, the less likely they are to buy. So they want to know they're going to get fast delivery and they're not going to have to wait for a long time. They want that gratification. Social proof is really important. Consumers want to know that your property or the experience they're looking at has got good social proof. They want to see the reviews. Scarcity bias, I'm sure many of you have seen this yourselves on hotel websites, but when you go and it says 10 people have looked at this property in the last 24 hours, and you're like, oh no, I've got to book it quick. Scarcity bias, you make them feel like that product is not necessarily going to be there unless they start to take action. Authority bias, that's where a certain entity or respected source would endorse the product. And the last one, I mentioned it before, consumers love to get a good deal. There is something really powerful about the power of free. They feel like they are getting something for free, so they're getting that good deal. I've got a couple of examples here. Let me see if I can use the pointer. So here, we've got here, free unlimited date changes. So that's something free, and it's also going to that piece around flexibility. Consumers want to know that they have flexibility. We have here that social proof. We've got a rating there and a review. And down here, we've got a little bit of that scarcity bias coming in, that book now, but also more baggage allowance. Again, that's going to that good deal. I'm getting something for free. It's a good deal for me. So when you're thinking about how you talk to your consumers, start trying to think about how you include some of these things that help consumers move from that research and exploration phase into that purchase phase. Because it is a complex journey. If you think about all of the sources that travelers are getting their information from, it's complex. So the faster you can help them move through that, the better. And hopefully, they choose your products if you're getting the messaging right to them. Let's talk about future-proofing. I heard just on the panel before some things around, somebody mentioned right at the end, the cookieless world. It is coming. And there are things like digital isn't going away. People are searching more online. And it is a skill set. And I went to uni. I wouldn't consider it that long ago, but it probably is now. But I studied business and marketing. And in that degree, in the mid-2000s, there was no digital media. So it is a relatively new skill, and you need to think about how you're approaching digital within your business, attracting the right talent to make sure that you are future-proofing for this continued digital world. So the first thing is, I've alluded to it before, but I've mentioned it before, the importance of multi-channel strategies. More than 90% of consumers expect to be interacting with you on multiple platforms, whether that be digital or physical. So you need to think about your marketing and communication strategy across multiple platforms. Consumers are shopping in retail outside 9 to 5. And so your consumers are always online. So if you've only got a physical presence, it's important to think about how you're going to interact with your consumers, whether that be call center, whether that be website, whether that be social. How are you going to be there when they want to interact with you? Digital skills. I mentioned that before, it is really important to attract the right talent in your business that understands how digital works, how digital platforms work, not just Google, but also social media and whatever other platforms that you choose, your website, to run your business off. And that last diagram is all around analytics. And again, analytics is a specific skill set. On all of your platforms, you should be thinking about what analytics, what data can I get from this to understand how consumers are interacting with me? Where are they coming from into my website? How long are they spending on specific pages? Which pages are they bouncing off? By looking at the data behind what's happening across your digital platforms, you'll start to understand what's resonating with consumers, and you'll be able to start to understand what works, what doesn't, and start to tweak. Also, which traffic drivers are the most successful in terms of travelers actually buying from you, because there will be some that work better for you than others. And when it comes to digital, Booking.com are amazing at this, testing and learning. And I'm not suggesting that overnight everybody will become like Booking.com, but at any one time they're running over 1,000 tests on their website globally. They have a constant approach and machine when it comes to testing and learning. They want to understand which landing pages resonate well, which bits of text or language work best, different colors of the buttons, placements on the page. And I think that's one of the beauties about digital, is that you can very, very quickly get data, which is why you need somebody that understands and is comfortable in analytics to start finding what those nuggets of information are in your data. So it's not a set and forget. You don't just get your website or your mobile app or set your AdWords or Facebook or Instagram campaign live. You really need to be going in and looking at what's working, why is it working? Are you using some of those 6 heuristics? Does some language, is free working better than flexible? And really just start to have that test and learn approach. It is by that testing and learning approach that you will be more successful if you use the data to inform your decisions. All right, I'm going to share with you some tools that we have at Google. A lot of what I have shown you today has come from these tools, so they're incredible resources. The first one, where I showed the destination demand. This one's great. This tool is probably 18 months old, and it's the first time that we've made this type of data externally. It's totally free as well. It shows you either by destination or by hotel destination. So you can look at flights and hotels, where consumer interest is coming from. And it's fascinating because you can see week-on-week changes, how consumer preferences are shifting. It's really good. It's super easy to use. I recommend you go in and start playing with it. And that goes to the point why it's important is so that you can make sure that you are talking to consumers about the stuff that they care about. This is a snapshot from the accommodation insights. This is looking at where does interest in accommodation in New South Wales come from? Unsurprisingly, this was, I just took this yesterday, this is over the last 12 weeks. Unsurprisingly, 96% of the interest in hotels in New South Wales is coming domestically, and only 4% from overseas. I expect that that's going to change over the next 12 weeks, so I'll definitely be going in and having a look to see what percentage change there is from international interest. When you go into the other destination insights, you can get a bit more granular in terms of where that interest is coming from. If you don't have a Google My Business profile, totally set one up. It's free, and it's a great way to showcase your business on the first page of the search results. You can put photos up there, there can be reviews, you can have messaging, people can call you. It's a great way. We saw how many more people are coming to Google to research. It's a great way to be there and be top of mind when that research phase starts. There is also a way through your Google business profile to have free booking links. Now this is a little bit more advanced, this does require an agreement with an integration partner, and it's technical. It's essentially where you send them your availability and your fares, and they then help get them published. From a Google perspective, it's free, but you'd need to speak to one of those integration partners if you're interested in that. All of that information is on that Google Travel Trends website that I showed you. So you can actually just go through, it's really easy to use, just go through and it will explain, and it's got a list of integration partners. For example, I know that Amadeus is one, SiteMinder is another one. They've got a whole list of them. And if you want to, I just showed you some free channels you can also promote through Google Ads, which I'm sure all of you know what that is. And you can do that based on the type of person, demographic, location they're searching for. If they're searching for your specific property or your specific brand, that's another way that you can raise yourself up to be top of mind during that purchase journey. I spoke about analytics and the importance of analytics. If you don't have analytics on your website, I highly recommend that you implement analytics. We have a free version of Google Analytics. It's actually pretty simple to do. You copy a piece of code and put it into each page on your website. And this, on the left-hand side here, you can see traffic sources. You can see audience and what their behavior is, so you can see the flows that people go through your website. Again, really key for starting to understand what on your site is working, which traffic sources are best for you in terms of driving sales, and that helps you make more informed decisions about where you want to spend your time and invest your money. A lot of the statistics that I've shown you today, that bit about the behavioral science and the heuristics, all of that is on Think with Google. It's a great resource. You just type into Google, Think with Google, and it has lots of case studies. It's got inspiration. It's got advice on how you implement different strategies. It's got lots of things about future-proofing. I highly recommend that you go through that as well, and also has video links, links to different trainings. So definitely go through and have a dig around that. You can also search by different industry, different countries and different brands as well. So some key takeaways from today. Digital is here to stay. Consumers are shopping more online. It's becoming more complex. And it's really important to start thinking about digital as one of the foundations of your business, because that's where brands and sellers are going to succeed. They need to be good in that space. So the first thing is about understanding consumer behavior, what your consumers care about, what are the trends, Which destinations are they looking for? The next one, make it easy to transact online. There's lots of research on Think with Google about how if you have a bad online experience, you'll lose the consumer and they might never come back. We've got some good research behind that. And if you don't have the capability to physically transact online, as in make the purchase, make it really clear and easy for them about what steps they need to do in order to make a transaction with you. But definitely have a think about, is it possible, or do we have the resources to start looking about how we can help a consumer transact from start to finish totally online? And the last one, boost your digital capabilities. It is a specific skill set, and there are lots of people out there with that skill set, and it's everything from understanding social media, Google, and analytics. And these are the things that I think are going to be really key to driving our wonderful industry back into what I hope. I am really optimistic. I think that this year and next year is going to be a very strong year for us. Thank you.
And Michelle, which digital agency should they use for their marketing? Understands it. Can you tell us?
You're gonna,
Fast Track Digital. Thank you very much, Michelle. Thank you. Thank you.